Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. We're going to talk about facial bones. We'll start our topic with introduction. Facial bone forms the framework of face, providing support and protection for eyes, nose, and mouth. These bones contribute to facial structures, expressions, and essential functions like chewing and breathing. Now let's talk about the facial bone. Human skull consists of two main divisions. The first is neurocranium that protects the brain and the other is viscerocranium that is also called as facial skeleton. As we discussed in last video, we talked about neurocranium and today we are going to talk about viscerocranium or facial skeleton. The facial skeleton comprises of 14 bones with some being paired and others unpaired. Now let's talk about the types of facial bone present. The first type is maxilla that is paired bone, the second is mandible that is unpaired bone, the third is zygomatic bones that are paired bones, the fourth is nasal bone that is paired bone, the fifth is lacrimal bone that is also the paired bone, the sixth is palatine bone that is paired bone, the seventh is inferior nasal conchae that is also paired bone and the eighth one is vomer that is unpaired bone. If we notice there we will see all of the bones except mandible and vomer are paired bones and mandible and vomer are unpaired bones of the facial skeleton. Now let's talk about them one by one. The first bone we are going to talk about is maxilla that is paired bone. That means there will be two maxillary bone in every skull. It forms the upper jaw and part of nose and eye socket. It houses the upper teeth and supports the hard palate. Maxilla contains the maxillary sinuses which aid in air filtration and voice resonance. Now let's talk about the second bone of facial skeleton that is mandible that is unpaired bone. That means there will be one mandible in every skull. It is largest and strongest facial bone. It forms the lower jaw and supports the lower teeth. It connects with the skull at temporomandibular joint allowing for the chewing and speaking. Next bone of the facial skeleton we are going to talk about is zygomatic bone. That is paired bone. That means there will be two bones in every facial skeleton. They are also known as cheekbone and they define facial contours. They articulate with the temporal, frontal and maxillary bone forming part of the orbit. The next bone we have is nasal bone that is paired bone. That means there will be two nasal bone in every skeleton and they are small bones that form the bridge of the nose. They provide attachment for the cartilage that shapes the external nose. Now let's talk about the next facial bone that is lacrimal bone that is also the paired bone and it is smallest facial bone. This is important point that this is smallest facial bone and it is located near the tear duct forming part of medial wall of orbit. It has interior drainage through the lacrimal fossa. Next bone of facial skeleton we have is palatine bone that is paired bone and it forms the posterior portion of hard palate. It contributes to the structure of nasal cavity and orbit. The next bone of facial skeleton we have is inferior nasal conchae that is paired bone and they are basically curved bone inside the nasal cavity that help in air filtration and humidification by increasing surface area. The next bone we have is vomer that is unpaired bone and it forms the lower part of nasal septum separating the nostrils. It articulates with the ethmoid bone, maxilla and palatine bone. Now let's talk about the functions of facial bone. The first function facial bones do is support and structure. As a facial bone shape facial features and provide attachment for muscles. The second function is protection as they shield the eyes, nasal cavity and oral structures from outside environment. The next function is facial movements as these bones allow expression through muscle attachment. The next function of facial bone is chewing and speech that is the mandible and maxilla play a crucial role in these functions and the mandibular movement at temporomandibular joint helps in doing these functions. The next function is respiration as nasal structure facilitate airflow and filtration thus helping the respiration. Now let's talk about the clinical relevance. The first clinical relevance we have is fractures, as fractures can lead to functional impairments such as difficulty breathing or chewing. The next clinical significance is congenital disorders like cleft palate that may affect facial bone development. Next, we have orthodontic treatment that adjusts bone alignment for better functionality and aesthetics. Now, at the end point, the facial points are essential for structural integrity, protection, and function. Their roles in expression, respiration, and chewing make them critical for both survival and individuality. Understanding the anatomy is vital in fields like medicine, dentistry, and forensic science. That's why the facial skeleton is really important to understand. And this was about the facial skeleton, and this is the end of the video. And hopefully you like the video. If you do, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. And do appreciate our efforts we make. Thank you for watching.